The hospice chaplain rang the doorbell, and a man welcomed her in. He had been waiting for her all morning. His mother had awoken very agitated. She had an important question to ask. And as much as she needed to ask this question, she was also afraid to pose it. She was afraid of the answer. But this had troubled her for 10 years. And Sadie knew that she was dying, and time was running out, and she needed an answer. Her oldest daughter, her name was Katie Grace, and she had been born 45 years ago. She was a month early, and she was born with physical and cognitive disabilities. Life with those disabilities and Katie had been bittersweet. The milestones that she looked for in her other children, they didn't happen. Katie Grace never married or went to college or had a child. Katie Grace could not drive a car or read a chapter book. Yet there was so much sweet among the bitter. Katie Grace had a big heart, and she was always ready with a smile as big as Kansas, and she was always there with a hug. Katie Grace said, "I love you," like other people say hello. Katie Grace said, "I love you," and she meant it every time. Her love of her family and friends and strangers alike, and her love of God filled their home with joy. So Sadie sits up a bit in her bed, and she gives the chaplain a slight smile. "Hello, Sadie," the chaplain says. There's no response. "I'm really glad to see you today." Still more quiet. Finally, she swallows hard and she says, "Hello, Reverend. Did you know that I'd had another child? My Katie Grace died 10 years ago, and Lord knows I miss her. My Katie Grace was disabled, and she took a very long, deep breath. When we lost her, our pastor then told me that she had been cured. And she swallowed again and paused as she was trying to gather her courage. She said, "You know, Reverend, there's just so much in the world about being perfect. Jesus does say that we are to be perfect. I know that." And she recites this passage from today. "Be therefore perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect." And you know, I know the part about being made perfect when we die. But finally then comes this question. If when we die, we are made perfect, will Katie Grace be different? That scares me that she could be different, because I'm afraid if she's different, I won't recognize her. And I want to see my child. If she changes, I'm afraid I won't know her. So much about how we move in our world is based upon being better and smarter and fastest. So much about how we move in this world is about winning and excluding others. We want to be the best at what we do, and we don't like sharing. That is, except when it's on Facebook, where we share our pictures, and they're always perfect pictures, right? But we know that often that version of our lives is not real. It's not authentic. And quite often, I suspect it's not true. As you may know, and probably do know, we have been working on our strategic plan at All Saints. This is a laborious project. In some ways, it's like Paul's letter to the Corinthians. We have been working on laying a foundation. And that foundation is coming from asking over 200 people and 24 different constituency groups their perceptions of our strengths and our weaknesses and our opportunities and our threats. We have also asked, if money and time were no object, what is your big dream for this holy place? Now, the committee has worked for over a year now, and we rolled out 3 goals during the annual meeting, and they're posted right here in the cloister. And the one that I have been, as a member of this committee, particularly working on is this one. We will grow deeper in faith and commitment as saints empowered to live in God's holy word. I think for some people, they seem so general and so broad. And that is the intention. Right now, what we're doing is working on getting those objectives and the action items, which will be clear and measurable. But make no mistake, they were not easy. Going deeper is rarely easy. Deeper is actually pretty hard. Because in order to go deeper, you have to be real. This last week, we celebrated the life and ministry of our own Doug Burgoyne. I have to say that my getting to know him and learn from him, as I am supposed to be the one giving him pastoral care and taking him Eucharist, has been one of the great privileges of serving you at All Saints. As it was pointed out in both Randy's homily and in each of the reflections and the talks that were given in Thornton Hall after the service, Doug was authentic. Doug was real. His ministry was authentic not just in joy, but he didn't shy away from the bad stuff, the hard stuff. It was authentic joy and authentic pain. In many of our conversations, we talked about this, and we talked about the enormous responsibility of being right where I am right now and preaching and teaching. Being real and authentic matters. Even in these divisive times, it's important to not shy away in our preaching and our teaching from teaching the gospel truth, even though sometimes it might ruffle some feathers. This gospel truth today can be hard, and you can bet it probably ruffled some feathers when Jesus said it. You'll notice that in each of these teachings, he's taking the Old Testament teaching and saying, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. And then he follows up with, but I say to you. And this time he says, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven, because you know the sun and the rain falls on all of us. Be perfect, Jesus said, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Doug taught me that it is our gospel responsibility to preach and teach, to protect the downtrodden, the disadvantaged, and the vulnerable. It's our gospel responsibility to remind us and to remind ourselves that we are, as Christians, called to love all people. It's our gospel responsibility to love God and to put God first, even when people tell you not to. We are Christians first, and as followers of Jesus, we know Jesus' inclusive, boundless heart, that heart that is open to love. And it is through Christ that we go deeper. And when we go deeper, we are able to discover God's love and God's joy. And it is refined to perfection. Jesus says, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Be perfect. We have been all given so much, and there's a lot to hide behind. And being real and authentic and going deeper is a challenge, and it can feel sacrificial, and it can feel vulnerable. But in allowing ourselves to be real, perhaps we can remember our true birthright as children of God. Doug did that. And this Katie Grace did that too. They both knew God's love in deep, very different, but real ways. I started today by telling you about Katie Grace and her mother's anxiety. You'll recall I said, Katie Grace said, I love you, like other people say hello. Katie Grace, I think, said, I love you, like God says, I love you. As the chaplain and Sadie sat together and prayed, they prayed out her question. Sadie laid her burden down at the chaplain's feet and at the feet of God. She said, I am afraid, God, and I give my fear to you. Please help me. When I go, I want to see my child. I want to know my child. My beautiful child, who some people said was defective. Katie Grace, who could not go to regular school and never learned how to drive a car, never lived on her own. But Lord, my Katie Grace, was the closest thing I've ever known to perfect.